So I am Jo, I'm the community ecologist for Devon Biodiversity Record Centre. So I'm working with Jo on this project. So the Conservation Communities Project, as Jo just described, working within these 11 parishes, running from officially started autumn 2019. We had a bit of a break last year due to the pandemic, and we'll be continuing until autumn next year. And funded by National Lottery. We've got a map of the area here. So if anyone here is from outside the area or outside Devon, you can just see on that map in the top left corner, that's the north coast, and Dartmoor would be at the sort of bottom right hand corner, to give you a bit of an idea of where we are geographically. So we've got these 11 parishes. These parishes seem to have fewer records than many other places within Devon, and that can be for a number of reasons. So for starters, there's possibly a bit less development. So with ecological consultants going and doing surveys, we're not getting those records. It's also not a very densely populated area, so just simply fewer people to send in records, and maybe there just aren't quite as many people who like recording. So that's why we're here, is to encourage everybody. And okay. Recording is really, really important. So first of all, I'm just going to preach a little bit about recording. It's really, really important to record things, not just those amazing rare things that you see, but also those species that you think of as really common. So I think Jo hinted at that with the amphibians and saying frog spawn. But unless we record those as well, it's really difficult to know where they are, what we can do to help manage them, if there's any increase or decrease in the population. It's really difficult to know that unless people are recording them and sharing those records. So where should you send your records to, or who should you send them into? So on our project website, on the Devon Wildlife Trust website, there's conservation communities. If you go there, you can actually download this wildlife survey document, which has got on the back a spreadsheet for you to record your sightings. So you can do that and send that back to Jo, or you can send them straight to DBRC. We've got details on our website. Or if you already do record and you use something like iRecord, you can send them into iRecord and we can still access those records. And obviously, if you're from outside Devon, send them to your own biological record centre. They'd be very glad to have your records. So the sort of things that you need to note down are who you are, and that is just in case you do see something really rare that we want to talk to you about. So if you send us in who you are and a contact detail, then obviously that's never shared outside of us, and simply for the basis of that record, what you saw. And people, I think, are sometimes a bit scared, particularly with botany or with some of the species where you might get two that are quite similar. So if you don't know exactly what species it is, you can send us in like the genus. So say, for example, you are standing outside a house and you see 200 bats fly out. Unless you've got a bat detector or you've got a license and you've been in to see what the bats are, you're not going to know, but you could always send us a record of 200 bats, and bat is enough because that's still interesting and might flag up to someone in the future to go and find out more. So if you know exactly what it is, then fantastic, let us know. But if you're not sure, then go for the sort of the level of certainty. So be it bat or down to the genus or the species. Where you are, so that's usually with a grid reference, which is really easy to get a grid reference off various apps or websites like Grid Reference Finder. You can just click and get your grid reference. So that's the easiest thing. That's what generally biological records run on in their location. And when, so that's the date. If you saw something great last year and you want to tell us about it, but you can't remember exactly what day it was, if it's something like a plant, it was probably there for more than one day. So you can send us, the month and the year is still really good information. And then any notes as well. So for example, you might have common frog as a species, but frog spawn as the state you actually saw it in. Or let us know if it was doing a certain type of behavior, or, as a hibernating hedgehog, something like that. It really helps to round up the record. So why have we done this talk? So we've chosen meadow mammals. It's obviously helped to draw lots of you in, and obviously I'm going to go through lots of lovely mammals in a moment. But it's also to help with the habitat side of things. So as well as species, Devon Biodiversity Record Centre do a lot of habitat data and holding. So our county wildlife sites and various levels we've got of what habitat is where in Devon, because we've got some fantastic habitats and some that need protecting and some that are really interesting. And so looking at meadow mammals, hopefully you'll all be going out to some lovely meadows and telling us about where they are and what you've seen in them. And over the next few months, hopefully we'll be able to do a little bit more in depth, and hopefully, fingers crossed, in-person training on things like botany and other species that will help to round that up. So you can go out and do some really good surveys. With this talk, it was difficult to know where to stop with meadows because there's just so many exciting things that you can find in them. So I've come up with a sort of short list of mammals. I could have put in foxes or badgers and deer, and I really wanted to just stretch out and go into birds and invertebrates and plants and everything, but there simply isn't the time in one talk. But hopefully over the course of the project, we'll be able to touch on many of those things as well. So first of all, what is a meadow? I looked this up and it seemed there are either many different definitions or none that will cover everything. So an area of open grassland seems to be the common denominator, and usually maintained by humans. So be that through a cut for hay or something, or through grazing over winter to keep it as grassland rather than succession into scrub and woodland. And the different types of grasslands can change depending on the flora and the underlying geology as well. And for those of you who are really interested, you can look at the national vegetation classifications for different definitions of different types of grassland. So moving on to the mammals, and I'm going to be going through a few different species, sort of often pairing them up to look at the difference between them, of some that are sometimes a bit confusing. So start with rabbits. Rabbits are found almost everywhere, up to 2 kilograms, 40 centimeters long, and they move around with a hop, as opposed to hares, which we'll cover in the next species. And looking at a population of about 40 million. So the males are bigger than the females. I'm going on to, I've got for each species, I've got a page of facts. So they are, according to the IUCN, globally endangered, but that's because rabbits' native country is Spain. So the Mammal Society call them near threatened. And here in the UK, they were probably brought in by the Romans, who I think spread them across much of Europe. And they can reproduce quite quickly. That's a well-known fact about rabbits, but they can produce a litter every month from January to August, with a few young in each litter, so they can very rapidly increase their numbers. But that is because they are slightly expendable. They come top of the list of many prey items for lots of our carnivores and birds of prey. So lots of young rabbits don't make it. Warrens can support 2 to 30 rabbits, but obviously that can increase quite a lot through the year as they reproduce and disperse. So back in the early 50s, when myxomatosis arrived, the rabbit population dropped by 99% in just 2 years, which is a massive, massive decrease. So that has largely recovered, but there are other things that affect rabbits. And in the last few years, there's been more research done on that. So recording rabbits is way more important than you might think it is. Again, you know, it's one of those species that we think of as really common, they're everywhere, but actually there are things that can massively affect the population. And for stats like this, it's because people are recording them. So please send us your rabbit records. And then the brown hare, so it can be twice as big. And for this species, it's the females who are bigger. They're identified by those long ears with the really dark tip. And hares have got amber eyes, so you can see the color of the iris. I mean, even in that picture, it's small, but you can see the amber in the iris, whereas rabbits have got really, really dark brown eyes. They've got these long legs, so they move with a lollop rather than a hop, sort of half walking, half hopping. And they eat young grass shoots, including cereal crops, which is why they have in the past been considered a bit of a pest. And their droppings are larger and more flattened than rabbit droppings, so quite considerably bigger. I think, you know, everyone can imagine a rabbit dropping, but they're up to 2 centimeters across, so much larger. Hares, this was a great statistic, can run up to 45 miles an hour, which is super fast. Have 3 to 4 litters of 2 to 4 young, and they have this strategy that involves minimal parenting. So the young hares, leverets, gather to be fed by their mother only as little as once a day, but otherwise they basically just sit on their own a few meters away from where they were born. And that is a strategy to protect them, because hares don't have burrows, they just live out in the open, sort of hidden in amongst long grasses and cereal crops. But by reducing the number of visits that the mother makes, it actually protects them, because they're not drawing attention to where those young hares are, and it helps keep them safe for that first sort of 4 weeks of life that it happens. And hares are reducing in number because of changes to the habitats in which they live in. There is, I was reading, combined with what they think is more predators in the form of foxes, but that's probably secondary and is only important because the hares don't have anywhere to hide. So here in Devon, we're actually got sort of quite nice habitats for hares, and in the project area, there are records of hares, and it's because we don't have so many of the huge fields of cereal crops, which means that although it looks great for hares, once they're cut, that's it, that's that habitat gone. Whereas actually having a mosaic of smaller fields with different options for them actually is much, much better. Moles. As an ecologist, being asked what my favourite animal is always a difficult question, but this month it's definitely moles. The UK population is 30 to 40 million, but that can triple after the breeding season, and we are in the breeding season at the moment. You'll rarely see them because they do spend most of their time underground, but molehills are the common field sign that you will find in many places, and particularly now, because the breeding season is March to April. And so you get the males moving around and crossing territories to find females. And again, there'll be another flurry of molehills sort of much later in the year. Not so much in the summer, because the ground is really, is usually much drier and harder and difficult to dig, which makes it really hard for the young moles who are dispersing. So over winter, you'll find more molehills. So here's an image, lots of molehills. I've seen loads in the last couple of weeks. And that's, again, early spring, this photo, so classic time of year. I am currently absolutely full of facts about moles, having read a really good book recently. So they can bend and rotate their chest up to 90 degrees from the rest of their body. So that's not bending at the hips, that's their actual spine. And that's so that they can twist around in the tunnels. Their tunnels being so deep underground, some of them have only got 1/3 of the oxygen. So moles have got extra hemoglobin in their blood to cope with that. Tunnels can be really shallow or up to 1.5 meters deep. And those tunnels will often be under the ground for years and years and years, and you may never know it. But if one mole who lived in those tunnels dies, it can just be taken over by another mole who may make some renovations, but you may not know that there are moles there for quite some time. Earthworms make up to 70% of their diet in the classic sort of southerly location. If they're living in woodland, probably earthworms are slightly less, and other invertebrates will make up a bigger percentage. They don't have any protection in law, but they are often trapped as being pests to farmers, although there's only a couple of things where they really cause damage. And most of the time it seems to be a sort of perceived problem rather than an actual one. A couple more facts that couldn't fit on there, but I just had to tell you. A mole can exert a sideways push of 24 times their own body weight, which is the equivalent of a 12-stone person pushing 1.8 tons. And at 22 days old, moles weigh 17 times their birth weight, which is a 3-week baby of a human baby at 8 stone, apparently. So that was yeah, just so many mole facts at the moment. Very interesting creatures. So hedgehogs, there's already been a talk on hedgehogs for conservation communities. You can look that up. It was recorded. It's on the Devon Wildlife Trust YouTube channel. So if you Google that and look for the hedgehog talk of conservation communities, you can find a great talk there by a colleague from Devon Wildlife Trust. But I think generally we all know what a hedgehog looks like. They're nocturnal, they are loud, they're active coming out about now. I've certainly got the one that's in my garden has been active in the last couple of weeks. I found evidence of his or her presence, and they eat a wide variety of invertebrates. They can travel up to 2 kilometers per night. The young disperse in August, and we have lost 1/3 of the population in the last 20 years, according to the People's Trust for Endangered Species. That's quite a big loss, and a lot of the records that we have for hedgehogs do seem to be from within villages and on the outskirts of towns, and not so many from out in the countryside a bit more. And I have certainly seen some out in what feels like the middle of nowhere. But most of the hedgehogs, personally, that I've seen have been within more sort of suburban areas. So it'd be really interesting within the conservation communities area, if you do see hedgehogs out in the wider countryside, to definitely let us know. Their biggest threats with that habitat is habitat loss and changes in management. So they need they sort of graze around on the edges of meadows to be able to get the invertebrates they need, but they also need to find shelter to make their nests for the day. So they need sort of the smaller meadows and areas, so there's plenty of cover as well as open ground. And they've got some protection in UK law. So this is my mice and more, which is actually splits into rodents and the insectivora. So I'm not going to talk about harvest mice because there's already been an excellent talk from Devon Mammal Group for conservation communities. It's not available as a recording, but I know that Joe is hoping to do some more stuff with harvest mice in the future. The survey season for them has pretty much come to an end now. So if any nests that you find, don't disturb, because they could very possibly have, be in use, basically. We're also hoping to do a talk on dormice, so I'm going to skip them today. And I'm not going to talk about rats, but that's another thing that we have they are underrepresented, I should say, in our records. I think that at one point we had more dormice records than rat records, and I just have a gut feeling there's probably more rats in Devon than there are of dormice, but people just don't let us know that they've got rats, or they've seen rats, I should say, rather than have rats. But do let us know, because, you know, how else do we know what's going on with the rat population? So looking at these mice, so there's the wood mouse. It's called the wood mouse, and it is generally found within woody areas, but they also live all along hedgerows and the edge of meadows. So if you're walking around and you hear a little squeak, see something running away, it could be a wood mouse. They've got big ears, bulging, boggly eyes, and a long tail that is slightly hairy, red-brown fur on their back, and paler underneath. So they've got that really pale tummy, and they live in holes in the ground, generally along the hedge line or in woods. But when we do small mammal trapping, if you leave them out in meadows, you will almost certainly get wood mice. So they do travel a little bit from their homes. The other one that looks really similar is a house mouse, obviously much more likely to be found at home, but just so you know the difference, it's got much smaller ears, about half the size, and an almost completely hairless tail. And the fur is grey-brown all over, rather than having that nice russety colour on top and paler tummy. There is also a yellow-necked mouse, which is much rarer, but unless you're doing trapping and you can actually scruff it and look at the yellow band, sort of a V shape across its neck and chest, you won't be able to spot the difference between that and a wood mouse unless you really know your mice. Voles. So within a meadow, there will probably be a large population of field voles. They are 14 centimeters from just their body, so from nose to the start of their tail, and then with another 5 centimeters of tail. And if we compare that to the bank vole, which you'll get, as you can tell by the name, more in banks and woodlands, but they look initially very similar. They're much smaller, and if you see, they've got a proportionally much longer tail. So a bank vole has got a tail that is at least half the size of its body, whereas a field vole is only about a third. Field vole, grey-brown colour, really abundant in open grasslands and meadows, and it eats grass and roots. And if you are out in a meadow and you've got those big, thick tussocks of grass, if you part those, then you'll often see little runs that go around between the bases of the grass tussocks, and you might find a little nest, and you can tell it's a vole nest rather than something like a harvest mouse, because it won't be attached to anything. And not that I'm encouraging anyone to pull apart nests, but if you did find a really old one, which sometimes they're just left out in the rain, if you pulled it apart, it's just made up of lots of short cut bits of grass that aren't woven together at all. So that's how you can tell it's a vole nest. And often with little short bits of grass cut, they tend to sort of chop up their grass and leave it in a little pile. And they do really green poos as well, droppings, I should say, as opposed to various other species where they're much darker brown. But because they just eat so much grass, their droppings are green. So the bank vole, obviously, is their size difference. They've got much more red fur, and they're mostly outside of meadows, but put in there for the comparison. So I think there's almost a field vole per person in the UK, and vole urine shows up under UV light, which is one of those interesting predator-prey interactions, because lots of birds of prey can see UV light. We can't, obviously, but lots of predators can, and insects can. It's when you go into what the species can see, it's yes, illuminating. And our shrews. So there are 4 species of shrew in the UK. I'm only going to talk about the common shrew and the pygmy shrew, because the other ones are the water shrew, so not so much a meadow species, and there's another shrew that you don't find on mainland Britain, the greater white-toothed shrew. So not rodents, they're the insectivora, which also include moles and hedgehogs. They're much more sort of ancient type of small mammal. And because they eat insects, they need to eat constantly, really high in metabolism. So every 2 to 3 hours they need to eat. So they've got, well, some protection. If you do small mammal trapping, you need to download a license for trapping shrews, and you need to be really careful to make sure that you're providing that insect food, so putting in mealworms or casters in there for them, because if they're in there all night, they do need to eat almost constantly, or they'll just die. So it's very important with small mammal trapping that you do provide everything that shrews need and download that license. So common shrew, got lots of them. The tail is half the length of the body, and it's tri-coloured. So by that, it's not multiple coloured stripes, but it's got, the picture is of a common shrew. So it's got the brown back, and it's got a much paler tummy. But then rather than it just fading in from one to the other, it's actually got this quite distinct band along the side. And they're quite a bit bigger than the pygmy shrew. And the tail for the pygmy shrew is proportionately longer. And then that doesn't have that third sort of band along the side. It's just got a brown back and a paler tummy. It's also the main thing the difference, because unless you've got the two next to each other, they're both very small mammals, although the pygmy shrew is tiny, but it's got a much more domed forehead. So I hope you can see my cursor, but for a common shrew, sort of gently slopes, but a pygmy shrew, it would come out like this. Like it's the sort of like a beluga whale. That's what I can think of. The really prominent forehead. So that's how you can tell a pygmy shrew. And then these are my last two species. And I was saying to Joe that I wrote the talk, and then over the weekend, I was just like, I just have to put these in as well. So stoats and weasels, because we're doing all this comparison. So you learn, hopefully, to tell the difference between similar looking species. And these are ones that, there's an old joke, what's the difference between a stoat and a weasel? And I'm not going to finish that. But they're both carnivores. Looking at these two pictures, you can see that one of the main differences, as well as size, which you can't necessarily tell if they're not next to each other, is this black tail tip that you get with stoats. And also, although they're both brown on the back and white underneath, with a stoat, you've got this really nice clear line demarcation between the two colours, where if you look at the weasel, it's much more patchy and bitty as the differentiation between the two colours. Much shorter tail as well, without the black tip, and considerably smaller, which we'll cover in a second. So stoats, about 30 centimetres long, plus another 10 for the tail. Males weigh, a small male would be sort of 200 grams, and they go up to like 450-ish grams, whereas the females are only 140 to 280 grams. And that, if we think back to what we said the rabbit was up to 2 kilograms, stoats hunt rabbits. So a small male or an average size female is going to be looking at bringing down an animal that is considerably larger. Just thinking back to the rabbits at the beginning. Stoats can change their colour in winter, so the ermine, where they go really pale. That tends to happen more in places where it does get really cold and snowy. Obviously, if you had a completely white stoat in Devon, it would probably do a lot worse in its hunting, because it would be really obvious. So sometimes they just go a little bit paler. Stoats live separately, so they don't live in pairs, they live individually in their own territory, and within that they'll have a few different burrows. They feed, well, so it's mainly on small mammals or medium-sized mammals in the case of rabbits, but can still considerably larger than they are, killed by a bite to the back of the neck. And interestingly, zoologically, they have delayed implantation, which means that after the young are born, in early summer, they will mate again, but they won't actually let that egg implant until the next spring. And pregnancy actually only lasts 4 weeks. So they can delay that to make sure that they're giving birth in spring again. And they can have 6 to 12 kits. And I know I should have put this probably on the last slide, but if you really, really feel like a nice laugh at the moment and something to cheer you up, go onto YouTube and look up Stoat on a trampoline, because it's really funny. And we could all do with a bit of a cheer up at the moment. But back to weasels. So much smaller, so only about 20 centimetres long, and a little tail. Our smallest carnivore, hunting small rodents, and it's small enough to get down into the burrows of bank voles and wood mice. They again live in separate territories. They have much fewer young. Thinking of weights, males are much larger than females, weighing at sort of a bit over 100 grams to 130 grams. But females as little as sort of 55 to 70-ish grams. And yeah, they're so small that the head of a weasel can fit through a wedding ring, is the fact that I found. So much, much smaller, and you can actually get weasels in small mammal traps, obviously if they think there might be something worth eating in there, whereas you wouldn't get that with a stoat. So hopefully that's cleared up the differences between those two. And that is my roundup of meadow mammals. So do go out, find some lovely meadows, start having a look at the mammals and the birds and the plants and the insects and everything, and really, really enjoy it and soak it in with that recording, and let us know what you see. As Jo said earlier, I don't know if anyone missed it, but she does have camera traps available if you live within the project area. That is Jo's email. So conservationcommunities@devonwildlifetrust.org. And again, at the Conservation Communities website, you can find the wildlife survey sheet, which has got a recording form on the back, or you can submit your records directly to DBRC. So if you want to find out a little bit more about mammals, Devon Wildlife Trust or the Wildlife Trust in general have some really good information on their websites. The Mammal Society and People's Trust for Endangered Species as well. And the book that I read that just made me completely nutty about moles for the last couple of weeks is called Moles, and it is from Whittet Books with the British Natural History Collection. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming tonight.